that is real. So you have this weird schism in the kid's head that some things that look like fantasy are indeed fantasy. Other things that look exactly like fantasy are totally real.
Yeah.
And how do you know which is which? You just have to have faith.
Right.
How can you teach a child that and not cause them, at the very least, some confusion?
Right. And I do know, obviously, that the more we talk to people, and from our experience, that you talk to adults that are sincere believers, they firewall off this one supernaturalness, and then everything else. Like, you know, most Christians probably don't believe in vampires and stuff.
Right.
I would imagine. But they somehow, through part of this process, that indoctrination is so strong that all of the other things that help you determine what reality is from fantasy are there and intact, except for this one idea. But it's the problem that there can be so many other things attached to this belief that makes it strange. So these are not the most gross examples that you can have. Obviously, if anyone wants to think back to what happened at the end of 2001, you can find a great example of what happens when someone who's been inculcated with a certain type of faith that has other things glommed onto it, like, for example, that they'll self-sacrifice in the name of the religion is beneficial, that can be harmful. And we're, of course, not equating American Christians or the majority of Christians to that level of crazy. I think that divorce from reality. But for sure, your concept of God, or most people's concept of God, are unique, and they're included among them with many things than just God and Jesus exists.
Right.
There are other doctrines that latch onto them.
There are other beliefs.
So how
and
do you
other
separate?
Doctrines.
You know.
Exactly. So that's kind of my best case scenario, the monster under the bed example, and how that creates a problematic toolkit for determining reality. A worst case scenario of even a more mild type of indoctrination than what you see in Jesus Camp, for example. You're teaching your kids that they're being watched all the time, that they're being judged all the time, that they're sinners and that they're bad people, and if they don't live up to these expectations you have for them, that they're going to be tortured forever in a lake of fire after they die. Or you may be teaching them that the end times are right now. We're living in the end times, and the world as they know it is going to end any second now. And
a large majority of Christians believe in the end time.
Yes, they do.
It's not a minority belief.
No, it's not.
Yeah.
And you know, you may be teaching your kid to go through their daily life with the belief that a significant portion of the people they know and love are just about to be killed and or tortured. How is this not harmful? I mean, children listen when you tell them things like this, and they will believe what the adults in their life tell them. That's harmful.
Right.
So anyway, in my opinion, that's harmful. Point number 2 that I always get whenever I talk to people about this is people tell me, well, teaching kids about religion is just taking care of one of many needs, just like you would provide food or shelter for your child. I agree, certainly, that it is clearly a parent's duty to provide for the needs of their kids, of course. But my contention is that religious belief is not a need. What we really have a need for as humans is answers to questions, okay? We all ask important questions about the world. Little kids are no exception. They ask these same questions in their own way. Why are we here? What's the meaning of life, if there even is one? Where did we come from? What happens to us after we die? Why are we moral? These are all questions that are important for us to understand the answers to. Now, any thinking person who looks at any kind of religious belief as a substitute for more rational answers to these questions will quickly realize that religion doesn't really answer these questions. It opens up more questions and more questions, and pretty soon you're in this regress. And eventually, if you think hard enough about these things, you become an apologist, because you have to sort of logically deal with the uncomfortable nature of all these questions that religion just continues to bring up. So religion doesn't provide an answer to questions. It's not fulfilling that need in a child's life, in my opinion. It's just like a comfy little blanket, and you can wrap up in it, and it makes you feel pretty good for a while, and makes it so that you don't have to learn too much about the natural world in order to find the answers that you're seeking.
Yeah, and I think it should be worth noting that obviously not everyone who grows into adulthood with this has sort of that much of a childlike attachment to the way that it is.
Right.
And I think this is going back to exactly what I said before. Human beings are incredibly good at being able to silo off one belief from others. You know, it's incredible how people can be Christ followers and what have you. And like Francis Collins is a fantastic example. How someone can be a devout literalist Christian and also, you know, understand that believe in and work for and be a genius in a field which basically refutes some of the basest ontological problems with the theology, with the worldview that's created there. And I think it's for sure I think it does. I agree with you. I think it stunts a child's ability to make this bridge into being an adult where you have to understand the world on the world's terms instead of understanding the world through a series of lies or comforting notions, comfortable notions. Obviously, it doesn't happen all the time.
Right.
But for some people, for some people, like for example, the bank robber who we just talked about, like I truly think that it stunts people from being able to do what's right.
Yeah, I would agree with you.
Yeah. So go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So I've got, the third point that I always get when I have this topic. As you can imagine, I have this conversation frequently with people. That probably says a lot about me. The third one that I get, and maybe the one that pisses me off the most, is it's a parent's right to pass along their beliefs. Parents have an obligation to care for their kids, to help them understand the world and help them achieve their full potential and become whole individuals. I agree that parents have a responsibility, but while religious belief may be very important to the parent in question, it may not be important to that individual child.
Sure.
And I think the reason why this excuse makes me so angry is that we have, I don't know if a lot of people realize this, but we treat children like second-class citizens in this country. It's kind of disturbing. The child has a right to make up their own mind about what they believe about the cosmos and about God and everything like that. And anyway, it ticks me off, and I wish people would stop saying, oh, it's the parent's right, it's the parent's right. What about the child's right? This is an individual human being with a functional mind, and they have the right, in my opinion, to make up their own mind about what they believe. Sure.
It's the thing of teach your children how to think, not what to think. I think a lot of people would say that.
I agree.
So I think we've got an email here through the magic
effect.
Whoa! Oh, it's incredible. I don't know how we do it every time.
You want to deal with the email?
Sure.
Here?
I'll ask you since you're the one that's putting forward. The closer you look at it, this is Scott actually. Oh, this is
Hi,
Scott. We know who this guy is. The closer you look at childhood indoctrination, the less distinction you can discern between religions in general. A Christian soldier is as willing to give up his or her life as is a Muslim soldier for exactly the same reasons. If God be on our side, who can be against us? This is where religion, fear, and superstition all lead. The end justifies the means. That absolutely may be true. I mean, I think the rationalizations that even those kids were implanted with in that clip were actually pretty incredible, where the girl was saying, they're making warriors of us, and sure, we're in a kind of war, but there's also a kind of peace to the whole idea, where they've already created this sort of rationalization where the most horrible part of someone saying that, the most horrible part of someone saying, I'm willing to do war for this, is somehow ameliorated by, ameliorated by other contradictory notions that somehow rationalize the whole thing.
Right. Yeah. It's a little goofy to me. Anyway, the point I was trying to make merely was this. Being the legal guardian of a person does not give you the right to manipulate the way that person thinks. And that's what indoctrination is. It's a manipulation of the way a person's mind is developing. And I think it's flat out just wrong. I think one of the most loving things a parent can do for their child is to accept the person they are, whether they believe the same things you do about the world and the universe or not. Anyway, on the topic of parents manipulating children's minds, we do have a couple more clips that we're going to play. One of them is very brief. This is clip number 2 for the board, if you guys can cue that up.
Boys and girls, I need everybody sitting up straight, hands holding smiley faces, looking right this way. Is there anyone in here that believes that God can do anything? God can do anything. We could just say, God.
Question.
It is, but I mean, because we have some people who might only be listening to the audio feed of this. The camp counselor who you hear speaking says, is there anybody here who believes that God can do anything? And what you see is this mother holding a little baby on her lap with a young child next to her, and she picks up both her kids' hands and sticks them up in the air.
For them.
So these kids, we believe it because Mom says so. Kind of makes my point for me.
No, that's a common theme in this movie, actually, when the kids talk about, the kids will say, oh, I remember Dad said this. Like, you can understand they're getting this from their parents and from other adults. Even though it sounds